Imagine you're just being chilling doing some schoolwork since you're the #1 procrastinator, and then all of a sudden you find yourself falling flat on the ground harder than only it being removed from Steam. And then the next thing you know is that now you're in an alternate dimension where a bombshell goddess greets you and smiles. Unfortunately, this isn't a dream, so the turntables turn, and the anime goddess informs you that if you don't destroy the gates of the girl beside you, then neither her and you can go home, and the world will slowly end due to chaos. Anyways, let's backtrack to earlier this morning so I can tell you guys about the story of Doyeon, a legendary hero that must clap to save the world. So today is the first day of Doyeon's new school semester where he plans to study hard or else he will no longer receive free Taco Bell money from his parents. He's exactly like me though, he studies for literally 5 minutes and then he convinces himself that it's time for a 2-hour break, so Doyeon decides to grab some food. But then within seconds of walking out his house, the Lucker dog runs into a sight he couldn't believe as he didn't think it was possible to find someone better looking than Madison Beer. Regardless, Doyeon gets graced by an 11 out of 10 only sus girl, and you already know bro is going to have a problem trying to hide his banana tree from sprouting faster than the weeds on my lawn. Unfortunately for our boy though, bro gets ignored harder than my 1-star polls on Genshin, so she just passes by without even the slightest of glances. But you know what? Doyeon doesn't care as he's probably trying to download what he just saw into his brain so he can use it for some alone time later tonight. Now the weird part about all this is that the random girl gets ganked by a kid on the sidewalk and the boy's head was literally smaller than one of her pyramids. But like a true model waifu, she doesn't mind getting randomly ganked as she's eager to help the kid and waste no time in helping him find his mother. Nonetheless, as Doyeon watches the random girl and kid disappear into the horizon, he decides to go back home to actually try and be productive. But he boots up Minecraft instead. Eventually, bro decides it's time for another break, but as he gets up, he experiences an unusual feeling causing him to hold on tightly to his brand new Herman Miller chair. Mere seconds later, Doyeon ends up finding himself flat on the floor, even flatter than the hills on his idol Taylor Swift. But the next time Doyeon opens his eyes, the only thing he could see around him is an infinite and endless supply of white and nothing. Bro then gets up hoping that this is just a dream, but much to his horror, he pinches himself but he doesn't even wake up. So now with the realization that maybe he actually is screwed forever, he tries his hardest to yell out for help, but again, nothing happens. As such, Doyeon decides to let one massive one rip since no one can smell it anyways, but just as he thought all hope is lost, a bright flash appears out of nowhere. Then right before the goddess appeared in front of our boy, Doyeon falls to his knees as he remembers the nightmare of the Phoenix on his team last night, constantly team flashing by accident over and over. Eventually, Doyeon reopens his eyes as he gets greeted by a heavenly voice, and let's just say, if I scroll down any more, then we will get banned harder than Tyler won during his prime. Suddenly, another sky flash appeared beside Doyeon as the goddess explained that she's about to bring another person here before she could explain everything in detail. But much to his surprise, the bright flash disappeared, but then it left behind the same random girl he encountered from earlier on his procrastinating break. Nevertheless, the girl gets absolutely terrified as she has no idea where she is, plus she's probably never ever watched anime, let alone one about reincarnation or meeting the legendary Recap-Kun. Eventually, the goddess intervenes and apologizes for rudely teleporting them to her realm, where she explains that she's the universal goddess of peace and stability. Furthermore, she explains that right at this moment, there are people on the brink of extinction and she needs their help to achieve peace and prosperity. Now me personally, I've seen too much anime, so if I ever meet a goddess with massive Honkai impacts and half her armor missing in another world, then my sussy senses will be tingling off the charts. Anyways, the goddess continues by opening up some kind of portal to show the two humans an example of what's going on right now, and if they don't help her gain some power, then she will be helpless to save those in need. Regardless, after taking a closer look at the portal, the goddess mentions that the bus is about to tip over at any moment, and there's nothing she can do as she needs to charge up like my Tesla. But for the first time ever, the main character does an admirable move by anxiously asking if the goddess can prove her claims, as bro probably thinks this is just some kind of elaborate prank bro. Within seconds of Doyeon asking for some proof about her claims, all three get teleported to where the bus is about to tip over, but apparently she has no powers by the way. Nonetheless, Doyeon looks down at the bus, but then he starts screaming at the top of his lungs since it turns out he's got a severe case of being afraid of heights. As such, she teleports everyone back to her realm, where our boy is able to finally catch his breath as bro almost had an accident in his brand new pants. Anyways, now that everything is sorted and both Doyeon and the random girl started to believe the words of the goddess ends up lowering her head and apologizes once again. Suddenly, the random girl that could be a billionaire on onlysus.com pipes up and asks the goddess what they can do to help, since she really wants to make sure everyone is safe before it's too late. However, just as the two randoms thought they were about to go on a quest, the goddess slowly reveals that she wants them to do some rice cake smashing to save those in danger. At the same time, we finally learn that the random girl on the street is named Gia, but upon learning of what our boy needs to do, Bro gets flustered as he can't fathom what he just heard, since surely this must be the biggest prank ever. Now let's be real here, boys. Do-yeon is 1069% down with the plan, but we already know Bro's going to try and act like it's the worst plan ever. Anyways, as Do-yeon stays quiet, poor girl Gia starts going off on the goddess, where she complains that this doesn't even make sense at all. And don't worry girl, this ain't making sense to me either, but all I know is that Do-yeon is living the dream. Regardless, the goddess apologizes to Gia and tells her that she can't really explain the power of God, but if they go through with it, then she can be a hero baby. The goddess then continues to profusely apologize to the two while gaslighting them harder than the true man's show, where she begs them to save the people, as she can't bear the weight on her shoulders without being able to help. Now I will go ahead and say what you all are thinking. Heck yeah, you would agree to her demands if you were Do-yeon right now, and honestly, if I was Gia and I could save the world, screw it, why not? However, just as I thought the sussy Fire Nation was about to show up with their body-bending attacks, small-brained Do-yeon pipes up by asking what would happen if they decide not to go through with her demands. It was at this very moment Bro knew he screwed up, as the angelic voice from the goddess gets replaced by a demonic one, claiming that she will keep them in her realm until they listen to her. Upon hearing her drastic voice and demeanor change, an otherworldly sensation is sent tingling through Do-yeon's spine, causing him to be more scared than all those dough fruit spammers. So now Do-yeon and Gia is left with no choice, and I feel like Gia got the short end of the stick, unless Do-yeon happens to be hiding a behemoth down under he's about to call the king. But truth be told, as Do-yeon acts like he's more pressed than Chris from Mr. Beast, he turns to Gia and slyly asks why not just consider her demands. Unfortunately, Gia still doesn't want to do it with him, so Bro decides to up the stakes and mention how if they don't do it, then everyone on the bus will perish, including the young ones who deserve nothing less, and there's no way he can live with himself afterwards. Nevertheless, Gia takes a few minutes to contemplate on whether or not it's worth it, even if it seems like this is just a setup, but whilst remembering the people on the bus, she gives in and she's truly the angelic one rather than the goddess. Upon hearing her agree, Do-yeon's banana tree plantation instantly activates Harden, causing him to promptly try his best to hide his excitement. Gia then continues on and explains that they just need to get it out of the way because they have no choice, and she might as well be Sydney Sweeney to save the world. So now that both have agreed upon the goddess's terms, our boy turns back to the goddess and confirms with her if they do it right this moment, then she will whisk them back to where they came from, and she will be able to finally use her powers for good. And so the two get ready on a makeshift bed, but it turns out Bro is about to experience his first ever rice cake smashing, so he starts profusely sweating. However, it's now revealed that the goddess added some terms to the agreement where both of them have to end up reaching the climax of the mountain, or else it doesn't count and they need to keep going. So who do you guys think is more sussy here, the goddess or our Bro, since this is crazy? Anyways, Bro is quick to action once Gia tells him that she is ready, so without any more hesitation, Do-yeon is like, ready or not, here I come. Initially, Gia wanted to play peekaboo, so she kept her eyes closed waiting for the ordeal to finish, but she couldn't help herself, so she peeked harder than my boy Tom when Do-yeon unequipped her legendary pieces of armor. Meanwhile, our boy is like, is this really happening right now? Because if he ends up waking any moment, then Bro will be super sad for a very long time. However, right before Do-yeon uses his dragon fruit to blast his mission into success phase, Bro mentions to Gia not to worry, as he will try his best to use his triple dart blade to make her reach the climax of Mount Gia. But then, at this very moment, Do-yeon realized he didn't even open his mouth to speak, but Gia understood him, causing him to realize he has somehow gained telepathic powers. Needless to say, the rest was history, where it's also revealed that a bombshell like Gia has never experienced rice cake destroying before either, so Do-yeon lucked out in more ways than one. So long story short, Bro started to identify as the ultimate attack helicopter, while Gia used Niagara Falls as her pronouns due to how splashing the waterfall was. And after successfully completing the hardest mission ever known to man, the goddess flies up into the sky and thanks the two whilst looking like the most sussy megabaka ever, full of smiles and a massive glowing aura. She then bows down before them, thanking them a million times, claiming that without their help she would have never been saved. Unfortunately for Do-yeon, Gia interrupts the goddess while she was busy trying to cosplay an angel in distress, ordering the goddess to teleport her back to where she came from. As such, the goddess complies with her demand, so she whips out her right arm, looking like she's about to send a Rasengan towards them. But instead, a massive beam of light began to engulf them. At the same time, Do-yeon attempts to evade the beam as he secretly wanted his second try at breaching Jia's narrow doors, but his reactions were too slow, and so Bro gets snapped back to reality, where he finds himself back on the floor with hella drool encumbering his face underneath. He then runs to the closest mirror, hoping that everything was real, but Bro has no idea if it was just a dream or not, or maybe his sus self has finally overtaken his physical form. Eventually, Do-yeon comes to the realization that if everything did happen, then he can ask Jia if he ever runs into her again, but he begins to worry about the Po-Po coming as his Mega Sussy evolution was a little bit too much. Nevertheless, Bro decides to act like nothing ever happened, so he calls up a friend to go eat some Korean food as he's hungrier than Matt Stoney. As he begins talking about playing Valorant with his buddy, it dawns on him that he totally forgot about his assignment that was due yesterday. But then, as he starts freaking out in the restaurant, his gaze randomly stops at a nearby TV where there's breaking news about a bus miraculously being saved out of nowhere. The story continues with Do-yeon freezing up harder than the Eskimos in Canada as he starts to realize that everything wasn't just a dream. Then, after taking a moment to take it all in, Do-yeon sits back down as he's starting to arouse suspicion from his friend who's starting to think that Do-yeon beat the ironwood too much today. However, our boy is a smart man, so he pieces 2 and 2 together and remembers that Jia attends the same school as his friend, so he starts vigorously questioning him about her. It's then revealed that pretty much every guy knows about her as she's a goddess in their school, especially since someone with such huge Honkai impacts happens to be single. With his friend now riled up talking about her, he stops for a moment and brings back the conversation to a halt as Bro began to tease Do-yeon instead, making fun of him for actually being interested in someone. But before the two were able to continue talking about Jia, Do-yeon's friend leaves him hanging as he realizes he's late for class, so he dips like he's peppercorn ranch. Nevertheless, shortly after devouring his leftover delicious Korean fried chicken, our boy heads back home to investigate more about the news he saw earlier. Upon further investigation, Do-yeon confirmed online that everything that happened with the bus was factually real, even the fact that everyone made it out alive miraculously. As such, he jumps straight into his bed super happy that he got a rice cake smash Jia for real, but he starts thinking about the goddess as she's way too sussy for being a goddess. But whilst thinking of the goddess, Do-yeon suddenly gets ganked by a tremor overtaking his mind, causing him to tightly clutch one side of his head, but the pain would not go away. Eventually, the pain subsides, but our boy finds himself teleported to the world of the goddess again. This time, though, he's glad his big cushions softened the blow, all thanks to not skipping leg day. Regardless, much to Do-yeon's surprise, he ends up making eye contact with Jia again, only for him to stare at Jia with her clothes totally invisible, all thanks to his boy Harry, and let's just say Bro was astonished at Jia's all-around figure. It's then revealed that while Do-yeon got teleported busy being chilling in his bed, Jia, on the other hand, she got teleported while she was busy in the middle of her water-bending shower. Of course, our bro doesn't care about anything else right now other than trying to stop his mountain from fully showing as he can't help himself due to Jia's alluring invisible looks. Luckily for him, though, his attention gets redirected to the opposite side of the room as the goddess finally decided to interrupt them to say hello. The goddess then began walking towards the two, while simultaneously glowing more and more the closer she got, but she thanks them profusely for helping her regain her powers. Things then take an obvious sussy turn, as the powerful goddess beckoned them closer only for her to transform into Bernie Sanders, as she once again calls upon them to help her save the rest of the world due to her inadequacies. As such, Jia absolutely gets frustrated again, so she attempts to get Do-yeon to back her up against the goddess, but we all know Bro is secretly loving every moment. Nonetheless, with Jia asking Do-yeon to say something, our boy tries his hardest to fight back against his sussy demons, as he literally has no problem with destroying Jia's rice cakes just to save the world. So unfortunately for Jia, our boy ends up losing to his demons, so he just shrugs and goes along with the goddess, claiming the fact that they should just listen to her if they want to get back to Earth. And with no choice other than to go along with the goddess's wishes, Jia reluctantly allows our boy to ask the goddess who needs saving this time, causing the tip of the goddess's twin pyramids of Giza to randomly get super rock hard upon learning of their choice. After smiling from ear to ear, the goddess whips out her wrecking ball of the future and shows a ruthless man looking like he's about to rack up his COD kill streak in real life. She then continues on and shows how a random yet innocent girl will want to stop his streak from starting, and she will for sure perish on the spot for doing so. As such, the goddess mentions how the woman does not deserve this, nor does anyone unlucky enough to be in his path, but apparently her powers right now aren't letting her stop the entire ordeal from happening. But with her help doing some good old rice cake destroying in front of her, then her powers will be free to stop the man from trying to take a single stock as Bayonetta from anyone around. This time, however, the goddess reveals that her powers can only be freed with the condition that Jia makes Do-yeon's banana tree gush like an active Yellowstone. So now our boy cannot get any luckier, as he's about to save multiple people just by standing still. So without further ado, Jia puts on some knee pads and goes to town by ripping open her target prize to save the world. But she gets shocked at the reveal of his two-handed sword. Originally, she hesitates as she's never ate a subway larger than a foot long, but with Earth on the line and multiple people about to get clapped by a Joker one-trick pony, she starts her attack. She then starts the 1-versus-1 duel by treating his Excalibur as some fire sticks that need to get rubbed together really fast to make fire, causing our boy to get flustered. Do-yeon then tries his hardest to keep his banana-flavored bubble tea to not spill, as he wants Jia to personally taste his special flavor, so he lets Jia know she's going to need to do more than fire stick rubbing to fulfill the agreement. As such, to help her out, our boy tells him that she needs to combo her hand attacks by sneaking in full-mouth quick attacks to make sure they can hit the finish line. And so they complete the mission after Do-yeon could not hold back his horses anymore, but the goddess appears out of nowhere and apologizes as she claims that they need to go again as that round didn't count. After hearing from the goddess that they need to do a redo, Jia gets totally upset and claims it isn't fair, but our boy sits there silently as he's absolutely relieved he can continue going. As such, he's unable to stop his hand from involuntarily reaching out, so Do-yeon ends up bringing Jia tightly close to him so he could convince her to go again, as the world needs them to give the goddess powers to save the world. He's then able to actually convince her, as he reminds her it's time for their weekly clash and premier tournaments, so they agree to the goddess's demands. Now with round 2 underway, Jia turns back around and questions our boy if he can really explode again, as bro just erupted literally seconds before. But thanks to Jia being a modern Aphrodite, our boy proudly says of course, as he's trained for this very moment and hopes he could have bagged an 11 out of 10. And so the second battle begins with Do-yeon falling flat on the ground, as this time the two plan for Jia to take charge even more as it's time for her to mount his e-bike straight to victory. Anyways, it was a very long and intense battle where it was clearly back and forth from both sides as fierce body bending techniques were introduced. Eventually, the first one to come out of the battle experiencing some post-Pinelet's clarity is actually Jia, as she could not contain the beast inside her ring. Then, after Jia combusted 2 more times, the goddess interfered like a referee inside the octagon as our boy finally got to the finish line. Regardless, the goddess thanks them for their cooperation but informs the two that unfortunately in the future, she might need to call upon their help again, so she apologizes in advance. Upon hearing the revelation that the goddess might continue calling them back over and over to save the world, Jia has had enough, so she breaks down and tells her to please pick someone else to save the world. Jia then pleads for her to pick someone else that would be into such a thing, and not her, but the goddess refuses to say anything. In the end, the goddess continues her vow of silence, but she proceeds to abide by some of Jia's wishes, so she sent Jia back to Earth by raising her palm. And just like that, poof goes the weasel, leaving Do-yeon to fall on the ground where Jia was last seen, where the dimension almost looks like a brand new Jubilee episode. With Do-yeon facing the wrath of the Earthbenders again, the goddess does what she does best by apologizing profusely for not giving him a heads up that she was about to send Jia back to Earth, causing him to touch grass. However, Rob doesn't mind too much as he thoroughly enjoyed the past hour, all thanks to this sussy goddess, who ends up thanking him for his cooperation to save the world. Nevertheless, after thanking our boy for all his deeds, she raises her right arm to send him back to his room, but Do-yeon pipes up and tells her to wait a single moment. This time, Do-yeon actually asks her straight up why she's doing this and questions her if she actually wants to save people, as he's only seen cultured anime and people like her are never this much of a sussy baka. But the goddess shyly looks away and pulls off a perfect politically correct response by totally avoiding his question, as she only mentions that all humans can avoid death. However, she continues by looking like she took some Hollywood and Korean drama classes, so she starts tearing up a little bit and claims she wants to stop the evil hearts of others whom are trying to force tragic circumstances on others. And the only way she could do that is with the help of both of them, so that's why she's trying her best to gain enough power to save everyone in need. But then Do-yeon responds by asking the question everyone has on their mind, so he asks why they have to rice cake smash for her to gain power. But the goddess just turns around and refuses to answer the question by claiming that she can't explain the authority of God to humans as it's forbidden, so she just flashes her fresh Subway buns to distract him from the truth. So with no answers being told, our boy tries again with a different question and asks her why does it have to be specifically Jia and him, when there's literally billions of people on Earth. Upon hearing his second question, the goddess quickly turned back around and started to look like an even bigger sussy backup by showing off her double broccolis to Do-yeon. where she explains that she picked them due to their compatibilities. Our bro then gets stun-locked as he didn't expect her to choose him and Gia just because the goddess wanted to be some kind of messed up Cupid. Regardless, the goddess apologizes again for not being able to reveal more as it's apparently not her duty, but she begs him that if she ever needs help again, then she will call upon his massive vanquisher. As such, our boy takes a few seconds to contemplate her request, but he quickly agrees again as he has no problem activating his attack helicopter. So he asks if she could send him back to his world. So fast forward an hour later back in Do-yeon's reality, our boy gets pumped that he can continue being the pumping man. But then the turntables turn as Do-yeon continues to head out of his apartment only for him to stop in his tracks with disbelief in his eyes. After blinking a couple times to make sure he isn't dreaming again, Do-yeon finally realizes that the girl in front of him is literally who he thinks it is. It was at this moment bro knew he's been playing too much Destiny 2, as the strike he conquered earlier happens to live right beside his apartment.